Hey, hello, everyone. It is Suzanne Worthley back with my co-host, Kim Hess. Hey, Kim.
Well, hello.
We are
Been a
here with
few weeks.
another Energy Unleashed podcast episode, and we're super excited because Kim and I went on a road trip, girls' road trip.
I think my
We
butt
actually
still
went,
hurts.
what? Your butt?
My
What? Your
butt
butt?
still hurts.
Because we sat in the car for 8.5 hours, right?
One
It
way.
was
Yeah.
actually super fun though. I mean, I haven't done a road trip forever, and who better
Yeah.
to do it with than you? Because we could talk to each other for what, 2 days.
Oh
So
my
yeah.
God. We were like, all of a sudden, we were like, oh, how did we get here? Like, what is happening?
Yeah. So for those of you that don't know, we're in Minnesota. We went down to the Journey of Truth conference. And so it was their last year, they called it the Secret Space Program Conference. This year they expanded it a little, so they just called it the Journey to Truth Conference. But we went down to a little teeny tiny town called Grafton, Illinois. And so we kind of, gosh, Kim, what did we do? Through Iowa?
Yeah. So Minnesota, down through Iowa, like Cedar
Yep.
Rapids, down that way. And then we were in Missouri for a hot second, like down to the Mississippi River, across to
Yeah.
into Illinois. So
And
we
then we were in the middle of cornfields. I mean, we were in the middle of nowhere to find this town. I think
Mhm.
Grafton, Illinois, when we pulled in, I believe it had like what did it say on the sign? 600 and some
It was
people,
not very
right?
many people. Yeah. Yeah.
Plus
It was
Grafton was in the middle of nowhere, and in that the actual conference was at the State Park Lodge, which was about 10 minutes outside of Grafton. But we were laughing because we felt like we were in a Stephen King movie set, because when we pulled into Grafton, there was nobody. And I mean like nobody in the
Yeah,
town.
nothing
It
was
was
open. Yeah.
spooky. Yeah. All we wanted was food and a glass of wine, and there was nothing open except a BP gas station. And then we finally did find some food at, what were we at? A winery?
Yeah, it was a little winery. Actually, that was really good. They had awesome
Mm-hmm.
brisket. Yeah,
Yep.
it was fantastic.
And we come in and it's like we're closing in 15 minutes. We're like, oh gosh, what happened
Okay,
to
we'll
this
take a bottle
town?
of wine and this and that. Okay. And you're closing at 7 o'clock at night? What's happening?
And there was nobody in this town. It was so weird. But I think what we concluded was it was just prior to Memorial Day weekend. And this is a town that is on the river. It is the convergence of, am I correct now, the Mississippi and the Illinois
Yes. Yeah.
River. And there was gigantic boats all in the lifts, probably waiting for their owners in this next weekend or so. But boy, oh boy, before that was open, the whole town is like kind of on stilts also,
Mhm.
in terms of, we heard that it floods quite extensively. And so all of the restaurants and all of the retail shops had these really big, like stilt things in the front. It was cute. But yet again, we couldn't get in to see anything because it was
Yeah.
all closed up. It was kind of
Everything was
creepy.
closed. So I'm sure over Memorial Weekend it was really hopping. I'm
I'm
guessing.
hoping.
Because
It
it's
looks like a,
really, you're only like 30 minutes away from St. Louis, you
yeah, it
know?
looks like a super fun place in the summer,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So in even our cottage place, so Kim had booked us
So
at a
cute.
really cute little cottage place, and we were the only people the first night, and the only people in the entire cottage, and we kept thinking, this is it. Sasquatch is coming to get us. And there was actually, remember, there was a Sasquatch, a big Sasquatch on the tree, like a cutout
Yeah.
one. And so we were giggling about that because we kept hearing clunking and noises. We're like, yep, this is it. We're getting taken. So anyway, this was a new thing for both of us. I am not really up to speed on secret space programming. That said, I really enjoy, in the last, I don't know, 6, 8 months, listening to Journey to Truth's podcast. So I encourage other listeners to check that out. Those two, I think Tyler is the gentleman that we worked more with for the conference, and Aaron is his partner online, who is also at the conference, but Tyler really was up front more. Very nice young men, very sweet. The conference was about, I don't know, 100, what do you think, Kim? 150 some people, maybe?
Yeah, there were people coming and going, so it was kind of hard to tell, but yeah, it was
Yeah,
a nice size. I
yeah.
mean, um,
Especially for the location, because we were at an old lodge from the 1930s, and a lot of people stayed on site. We chose not to, so that we could go back and kind of hunker down and relive the day. But it was such an interesting, we went down so that we could have, I don't know, an understanding of a bigger picture of all of this, but more so to sell books. And so I brought my Confident Empath book, but I also brought my Energy Healers Book of Dying, and we had both of them. And Kim and I were both quite surprised that I sold just as many of the dying books as we did the empath books. We didn't sell tons, but we sold a good amount, sold a good amount, and chatted and networked and got to know some people. For me, and we're just going to kind of give you a little bit of a, I don't know, a summary of what we kind of got introduced to, I guess, there, right?
Yeah.
For me, it was all, not all new, but a new twist on a lot of things. I think one of my favorites was the first gal that spoke, and we're not going to give anybody's names. If you choose to, you can look up on Journey to Truth's conference and track down the people, but we're just going to talk generalities today. The first gal was really interesting because she talked a lot about starseed children and children in themselves, as far as activating them and the children that are really highly activated. And I think one of her coolest things that she talked about is she has a mission to drop labels. And I loved that.
Yeah.
She really spoke to the fact of, we have got to, as a society, quit thinking children like that are Asperger's, which is not even, I think, a word that they use much anymore in the actual world of that science, but Asperger's, ADHD, autism, all of those kids. Dyslexia. She was really pointing out how they are unbelievably high caliber starseed children. And I have always thought that. I mean, was that new for you to think that? Or
well,
did you
I always thought that, gosh, I don't know. I had mixed feelings coming, like I didn't know what to expect going into this whole thing. But
yeah,
when you talk about children like that, I always felt like there's something like that is just different, not necessarily even what coming in, but that something may be triggered. And because I had gone down the vaccine rabbit hole a long time ago. And I just wasn't sure, like, why so many, and why so many are reported compared to like when we were kids. I don't remember, unless they just couldn't diagnose it then. But I didn't think about it as them being starseeds like that.
Yeah.
And it's so amazing because they're just multidimensional, so in tune, and have abilities that we should all be using, right? It's
and more so, what I think is very apparent when you put this paradigm on it is their frustration with other humans.
Yeah.
More so about, because me even being a starseed, gets very frustrated with people like, why can't you see that? Why don't you know that? Why don't you understand that? Why can't you remember that? And a lot of that frustration as an adult is really prevalent for me. And I struggle with feeling very judgmental on others because I'm always like, why don't you get that? Why don't you remember that? And so I think these children, I have always felt that they're really highly, highly gifted starseed children. I was made privy years ago to go and work with some Asperger's, autistic, etc. children in a clinic that my daughter-in-law, she studies the brain and she studies autism specifically, and she's doing her doctorate right now. We're going to have a Dr. Worthley in the family very soon here in terms of that actual situation. And when Emma was working at a clinic, she invited me to come on down, and spending a couple days with these young people, and they were quite young children. I was watching their hand motions and I was watching their frustration levels, but I was also watching them oracally. And I would see how, if they had confrontation, that their hand movements, which disturb most people because it makes us feel uncomfortable, are actually healing the auric field. And I would watch the action of the hand movements. They would pull in and move energies. And I don't even know if they know that they're doing it, but one of the young men, I remember his name was Max, I believe. I'm not even sure because it's been so many years, or Matt or something like that. But anyway, regardless, he was a little bit older. So I would challenge him a little bit and say, you can see the energy, can't you? And you're putting it back together. And he looked at me and he's like, how do you know that? And I said, because I can see the energy too. And he said, you can see the energy too? And I said, yeah, I can see the fields. And we're having these discussions back and forth. And this kid was like 9 or 10 or maybe 11 at the most. And we're having this pretty adult conversation about putting the fields back together with the hands and this and that. And he's like, I can't even believe that you can see them though. And I go, it's my superpower. And then he thought he was really cool because he thought maybe I did have a superpower. So we got to know each other quite well, but I watched how he would work and resolve conflict with hand movements and jerking or retreating. And I thought it was fascinating. So that concept that she presented at this conference, I have had in my head for quite some time, and that really validated a lot. So again, these kids are incredibly gifted, and we want to, remove them or make them normal, when in my opinion, they are the normal. They are the
Right.
normal. We're the
Right.
ones that are dummied down. So I think that she's right. It has to change. This has
Yeah,
to
and I think
change.
that even children that are not labeled like that, she went into a lot about the negative agenda and different things that they're doing through the school systems, through, I just was so, you should really go check out this agenda at Journey to Truth, because her idea and what children are coming in and what they're capable of, and how immediately we start shutting all of those things down in these children,
Hmm.
it's so eye-opening. And but I look back at my childhood, I'm like, yep, we did all those things.
Hmm.
I get it. I did it to my children too. I mean, and so I think her whole program, she spoke for a couple of hours, was really fascinating.
I think one of the most incredible things that she brought forward that I wanted to share with our listeners and whomever wants to share these videos with others so that this stuff gets out there, because it is important, is that the voice of God technology. She
Mhm.
touched on the AI and tagged it the voice of God technology, which I thought was super cool, because she explained how the algorithms of AI, which we talk about a lot on our
Mhm.
membership Vibe Tribe, um, this is a algorithm, constant, throwing it into the universal structures all the time, just pumping out negative information. And it is things like, you are not good enough, you are not important, you are fat, you are ugly, you are not appreciated, your mother hates you, your father thinks you're, no good. All of these like literal voices of negativity they're pumping out into the actual grid patterns of our holographic universe, meaning that we are all being bombarded with this
Mhm.
24/7, but they do indeed target children, she said. And I think this is so interesting because we have such difficult times right now in our school systems with safety issues, et cetera. And this is tagging onto or dovetailing onto social media bullying, et cetera, et
Mhm.
cetera. So our children are being indoctrinated 24/7 in the school systems anyway, and they're already being dummied down and they're already being programmed. But this voice of God technology, when she talked about that, that really hit home for me, because I really know this AI stuff is scary. And we hide within programs. Our kids are playing silly little games. They're playing, gosh, when my kids were little, they had Game Boys and Xboxes, I mean,
Yeah.
that's how old
Right.
mine are. And they're constantly online with the TikToks or the whatevers, because they are finding these channels of where they think they're connecting. But what they don't understand is the overlaying technology that's talking to them in a etheric way, like in an energetic way, like it's coming through the sound wave patterns, and it's subconsciously programming even more negativity. And I thought that that was fascinatingly scary.
Right, and the one thing that, when you say the sound waves, it was totally that frequency, like they're training certain frequencies
Yeah.
in their brains, so that if they do a certain frequency, it can create a violent behavior,
Yep.
or they put out a different frequency, it'll create like them to do an action that they've been, programmed to do.
Pre-programmed to do without
Yeah.
their consent. And I think one of the reasons why Kim and I wanted to also learn more about this is my belief system. And again, anything, take what resonates when Kim and I talk, or I talk on anything, is that toss what doesn't resonate for you, because we're not here to be your truth. But I
Mhm.
think that it is very important for us to understand, by not looking into things and not understanding things or researching things, or opening your mind to them, and or examining how you feel about something, that is automatically giving consent to something, because you were not standing up for something. And the negative agenda is very crafty at how they put everything right out. It is a universal law that they have to have exposure, that they are showing their agenda. And by showing their agenda and you just either ignoring it or not caring about it or not wanting to do anything about it, is automatically giving that agenda consent.
Mhm.
And so when we go to things like this and we start to ponder, gosh, is that really a real thing? Is that like so ridiculous? Is that all made up? I don't care. I don't care either way. What I care about is not giving consent. What I care about is having the understanding that this could be a potentiality. And if it doesn't resonate for me in any way, shape, or form, I jump on, I do not consent. I do not consent. Even if it's something I can't get my head around and it sounds disgusting and horrible and awful, I at least declare I do not consent, because that changes the amount of consent percentages in the collective field that is happening at an exorbitant rate because no one's not consenting. I mean,
Right.
it's crazy. It's crazy.
It's like, but but then when you think about it, people are being, through food, television, media, all of those things, we've become less compassionate and conscious of what's
Desensitized.
happening, right? Like,
It's desensitization is what it is.
desensitized.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Good word.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I
Yeah.
was
And
thinking.
it's really important for people to understand this doesn't mean that we're sitting here having another agenda that says jump down every rabbit hole, like we said, but certainly possibly have the courage to look in the rabbit hole and go, wow, that's interesting. I don't know if I believe it, but if I did believe it, I certainly wouldn't consent to it
Yeah.
because
And
it's
so when you
horrific.
start to pay attention around you, you're like, oh, like, at least
Yeah.
being aware, you start to see things that you didn't really pay attention to before because you
And you
didn't
see
think it affected
patterns
you.
and
Mhm.
patterns and patterns and patterns. So
Mhm.
the gal that was after that, I thought was super funny. She was called the Cryptid Huntress, which I thought was really a funny name, her tag name for her work. But she is a Bigfoot and Sasquatch pro- professional, I guess you would call her, because she does a lot of that. I don't think it's her full-time job by any means, because I don't think you get paid to do Bigfoot work,
It's
but
yeah.
maybe she does, maybe she does. But it is interesting in that she stuck up a slide, which we both kind of dropped our jaw, because everybody wants to kind of believe in Sasquatch and everybody thinks, wow, it is a potential. I personally, because we're from Minnesota and we know Minnesota, especially on our way to our cabins, there is a pocket of area up there called Moose Lake that has quite an active Sasquatch community.
Yeah.
And so my own daughter has seen some things. We have had some other people that are aware of things. I personally haven't. I think it'd be fascinating, although I think I'd be scared to death if it really happened. But then I'd calm down
I don't
and
know what I
think it
would
was
do. I really haven't thought
super
about what
cool.
I would do.
Yeah. But when she stuck up that slide, when our mouths fell open, was when she was talking about there's at least 8 to 9 different kinds of Sasquatch or Bigfoot, which I thought was super enlightening for me, because I think a lot of us lump it into just that one concept of the big hairy being.
Well, I
And
think
she had
it's more like
several.
like 8 or 9 different types of creatures that could have been tagged maybe as Sasquatch, but as she broke them out, there was like others, Dogman, there were other labels for some of those
Okay.
too. Yeah.
And she also talked about, I think a Sasquatch or a Bigfoot in this area of the region does not necessarily look like or react like this area of the region in the US. So they are kind of like territorial as well, which I thought
Mhm.
was super interesting. She did have some really cool slides on footprints and such. And I mean, which always to
Mhm.
me is amazing. I truly believe if the Sasquatch is coming through, I align with some of the things that she said and always have, in that they are higher dimensional beings, that they are resonating
Mm.
and actually living and being in a timeline with a frequency that is way higher than us, and that they can come through a wrinkle of that second dimension. And this is oftentimes why we would never see their bones, or we wouldn't see, where they lived, and so on and so forth, because they'll wrinkle in and out of kind of like an overlap of the second dimension. But
Mhm.
I don't believe they are fully living in the second dimension. I think they're way higher, up into like 6, 7, 8 kind of a thing, because of the wisdom, because of the knowledge, because of the ancientness of them. So I thought that her presentation was really quite interesting.
It was really interesting, and the other part that she went into that I'm like, well, because when you talk about secret space programs, there's supposedly underground
Mm-hmm.
facilities. And one part of her talk was that there's certain land that resides over, they believe, some of these facilities, and that some of the odd creatures, not necessarily the Sasquatch looking creature, maybe have been developed and they're a hybrid of animal, human kind of things, that are just out there roaming the land that is on that property of the SSP. So I was like, that was one of the moments I'm like,
That,
what?
yeah, that's
What?
kind of
And
like
I
one of
had
those things
never
that,
heard anything like that. But
yeah.
she also does a lot of like through telepathy,
Mhm.
remote work on land, which has been interesting too. But some of her stories were really, really fascinating about, especially around missing people and what they think happened with missing people.
She was the remote viewer as
Yeah.
well, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, because I think this is a really big thing in the secret space program also, in that the remote viewers are the psychic people that are really trained to go into spaces and places via telepathy. And she went quite extensively into that, and that they could remote view the Sasquatch or the Bigfoot or these creatures from different spaces and places, which I thought was super interesting
That
too.
was really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like, what? That was those moments of, oh my God, wait, go
We
back.
kept we kept doing
Rewind.
that.
We'd look at each other like, what is that? What do you think that really means?
Yeah. And I think I'm going to jump into a sidebar here in terms of the audience was very interesting. I think Kim and I were probably not the only ones going, what,
No.
throughout the weekend, because, or the week, I should say, because that was a very interesting, eclectic audience, all age groups, all the way
Mhm.
down to a couple of kids, which I thought was kind of interesting. Um, Male and female, lots of different reasons for being there. We were privy to a couple conversations at our table where we met a couple death doulas, for example, which was
Mhm.
interesting. I think some people were super, super religious and thinking this was, the God source reason was why they were there. Other people were completely UFO people. Other people were completely government people. Other people were, just kind of totally into it just for yucks and funny giggles. And other people were super serious. It was all over the board.
All over the board. The energy in that room when somebody would be speaking was just crazy to me. It was all over the board.
Yeah. And I think that they did a nice job this year in putting in a variety of topics, not just all secret space stuff. Whereas I think the year before, that's pretty much what they focused on, but they're deciding to open up the palette, which I thought was awesome. And they even had some kind of like information more so about some healing and some sound, and we'll get into that in a minute. But what came next for us, I think that was really new
Mhm.
for both Kim and I, was they had a panel of what they call super soldiers. And there was 4 gentlemen. They were various ages, but I think the youngest was probably 40, and then up to maybe in the 50s, if that. They were all what were tagged as super soldiers, meaning that they were taken as children. This is their story, that they were taken as children because of the testing in traditional schools showed that they were gifted and or had heightened abilities
Mhm.
and psychicness also. And many of them said that they were taken at age 6 to 8 and literally taken from their family and went into the government programs. The 3-letter agencies, we'll just leave it at that, were involved in this, and that they were then trained as remote viewers and kind of like biological warfare tools.
Mhm.
And that to me was jaw dropping. I was very hesitant to want to believe in the really sad, difficult parts of their story. And yet, who am I to say that isn't real? And I stayed very neutral as best that I could. But when Kim and I would get back to our own little cozy cabin and crack a bottle of wine, is when we would go, oh my God. Oh my God, what do you think? Is that real? Can that be real? Does that really happen? I mean, when they're talking about, going through portals and going on to, other planetary systems and losing 20 years in their life and then being mind wiped, etc. It was mind boggling for
Yeah,
me.
because
Mind
I think it was
boggling.
so interesting that between our government and other planets, there's contracts, there's war, there's all kinds of things going on that we have no clue that that's going
Yeah.
on. And so
And again,
I was
this,
really hard. That was a really good practice on staying neutral and
yeah,
not emotionally reacting because I'm like, what? What do you, I mean, it was funny.
it was mind boggling. That's all I can say. It was mind blowing. And we were doing our best to stay neutral on that, because who's to say that that hasn't been happening? And they claim, by the way, which I probably agree with, if it is happening, it's always been happening.
Yeah.
And these contracts, interstellar contracts, I totally can understand. Being a off-planet worker myself and going on ship myself, oftentimes it's pretty easy for me to understand that. I've gone back and done all kinds of things where I've gone out of my body and done remote viewing on the electric auras and remembering, stepping onto planets, being with the Galactic Federation, blah, blah. So, I mean, all that stuff makes a lot of sense to me. But I'm going to tell you, when you meet a actual human being that has gone through this process, it's terrifying in terms of what happens to them. And especially as an energy practitioner and a healer, I have this tendency to scan people. I'm not invading their privacy. I just scan for my own vibrational protection, meaning I am always putting out my feelers of my body so that I can do a check with your vibration so that I know if I have to boot up my aura. And it isn't a judgment on anybody. It's just a way that I protect my empathingness. And so I was constantly on alert doing scanning to make sure that I could maintain my own field.
Mhm.
And when that's happening, you're realizing this mishmash of auras and this mishmash of depletion of energy on a lot of these people, not just the super soldiers, but everybody at a conference like this, because everyone's all over the board with their energy field. So that was something that I was on task with almost like 24/7.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the other point on that panel that was mind blowing to me is that what these contracts are, a lot of them are around minerals between the
Mhm.
planets, and that it's a lot of human trafficking, slavery
Yeah.
humans.
And
And
again, these are things that we don't want to think about as being a normal human, and they're very
mm,
disturbing and sad. And I don't necessarily, Kim and I are not sitting on here saying that this is real because we heard it at a conference. What I'm
yeah,
saying is do your own discernment, do your own checks, do your own fact checking, check into these, check into Journey of Truth talks a lot about these subject matters. And again, the reason why this is important to at least entertain the thought of is to go, okay, well, then if I really think this is horrific, I don't consent to that. I will never consent to that. We as a human race do not need to consent to that and so forth, because I'm going to say it one more time, by not looking at it and ignoring it, you're automatically consenting to it. And
right.
this is why this stuff has gotten out of control for so many years. So as a practitioner, again, when I look at them, I am hoping that this conference and the people involved in it get more and more into the healing of their soul, the
Mhm.
healing of their auric fields, their bodies. If indeed we are in a society, which I kind of think we are, filled with clones and empty vehicles and people that are what we call oftentimes on our Vibe Tribe webcasts, we'll talk about grayscale people, meaning that they have been through the system of reincarnation so many times that they are like on a printer, losing their depth of connection to their soul. This is something that is in need of healing, and we have the capacity to do soul retrieval work. And when I was meeting with a couple of these gentlemen separately, they came over and spoke to both Kim and I at our table. And I was saying things like, soul retrieval is a thing. You get to do that. That's your birthright.
Mhm.
And I think this is new to some in that community, not all. I
Mhm.
think there's a lot of really smart people in that SSP community that understand energy. But I think that there's some that are in the audience that don't even know what that is. And certainly they don't know what empathing is. And this is why we brought the book, because so many people came up to our table and said, oh my God, I can barely make it through this conference. I'm so exhausted. Oh my goodness, I can't even stand next to certain people because I'm so dizzy. Oh my God, I want to just, fall asleep and get out of here, because they're losing their energetic field and they're empathing everything and anything. Now think of that times a gazillion when we go off planet and or into interdimensional, wormholes and or other planetary systems and have time travel and have clones. This is a big deal to be able to understand that it's our personal responsibility to learn about our auric field and understand that we are empathing, and that is not mine to take. So maybe next year that will be a bigger subject at the conference, because I think it's really critical.
Well, I think the healing for these people that have been through these traumas, and
Yeah.
not only traumas that talking about the soldiers, it's a lot of the people who were there have been through major traumas that they've
Yep.
never dealt with. And so, digging into all of that and figuring out what are your triggers, what creates the emotion, what are those things is really important. And your book is so great for all of that. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it was fun to see people really, when you started talking about what the book's about, and they would kind of click like, oh, okay, I get it
Yeah.
now, so that
But
was
it's not a common word in their industry quite yet. It's getting there, but it's not a
really,
common word. And the healing aspect is eking into their industry, the SSP, UFOlogy, all of that stuff. And I really hopefully it is getting better and better. One of the speakers we were so excited to see, and I will throw her name out because she didn't get there for whatever reason we didn't know. Her name was Geraldine, and she was going to be talking a lot about the hybrid program and a lot of the healing. And she's a hypnotherapist that does the healing, etc. And we were really quite saddened in that she
I
was
know.
not able to attend for I don't know what reason. But I think that the hybrid program in and of itself is so trauma based for people that are involved in that. If you truly are being taken, abduction, UFO, sightings, being so scared to even say that you saw this. I mean, at one point, one gentleman that was speaking said, how many in the audience have had a UFO encounter? And it was about 98% of the audience, if not 100%, hands went up. It was crazy,
It was huge. Yeah.
crazy.
I was surprised. Not really, but then I was, because I've never been in a room where that many people have had that, experience.
Right. And the experiences are vast. I mean, they're vast from, oh, I've seen some stuff in the sky, or I've taken what they call C5, means that they are getting to a level of a really high vibrational connection for the UFO, and they can take it on a photograph.
Mhm.
Lily Nova is one of the speakers. I did her podcast not all that long ago, and she's one of the C5 photographers. She was supposed to be running some night watches, but it was too cloudy. I oftentimes think that also that you get chemtrails so that they fill the skies up
When you have
when
that
there's
many
that.
people looking,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. It's
yeah,
kind of like, let's just fill the sky up so all these sky watchers can't find anything.
yeah.
But there was many, many people there that had quite a few vast experiences. And again, oftentimes these can be tragic, these can be haunting, they can be confusing, they can be feeling like I'm alone. No one understands me. I can't share this. People are going to think I'm crazy. So I think that in and of itself was a really cool part of this conference, to be able to see people sharing their so-called crazy stories that they can't even tell their family and their friends with complete strangers, which are 100% open to it. And I thought that was a really neat piece of this.
Yeah. And that's a really good part of healing too, in my opinion.
Right.
Like, to be able to get that out there and have other people that are like-minded and have the similar experiences it's huge for healing. You're not
Right.
alone. You've got a posse of people now,
That happened to me when another gentleman that was a speaker showed a lot of actual beautiful drawings that he had contracted. And the irony of this one was, quite literally, Kim was telling our vendor neighbor, because we befriended our neighbor at the conference in the back where our vendor booth was. And Kim was actually telling this gal about her experience of having her soul, what did we call them? Maybe a soul channeling.
It
And
was a
we worked with this
channeling.
a
Yeah.
beautiful woman, and there's 4 of us friends that did a channeling with the same woman, and you give her your information and she does a computer generated and drawn kind of conglomeration of a beautiful picture of what your soul actually looks like, and then does a whole channeling with it. And it's a beautiful gift to give yourself or someone else. And Kim was telling our neighbor about it, and absolutely the next speaker was using that same woman's drawings in his presentation, which we almost fell off our chair. I mean, the
Yeah.
synchronicity of that was crazy,
Yeah,
crazy.
and it's synchronicity in time too, because I think that when we were doing our drawings, she needed to get them done because she was doing a special project. So
Yep,
he hired her to do all of these beautiful artwork pieces for the book that he was going to be putting out. And
correct.
so he was using them in his presentation, and we're like, what?
The
Like, it's
synchronicity was
so amazing.
crazy on that
Yeah.
one. But as this gentleman kept flipping through, me personally was snapping pictures of his slides left and right, because I probably have 9 of them that I took a picture of that 100% resonate with what I see when I go off planet, what I have seen or I know, what I work with. similar feelings. I know in some of them, he was even saying, I'm not sure what this is. And I'm in the back of the room going, I know exactly what that is because I've done work with that. So the commonality in that particular presentation for me was mind-boggling again, in that to really, really see somebody having the privy of an artist as great as Christine is, to be able to actually capture what you see off planet. I mean, I'd love to be able to afford somebody to do that as well, because it's hard to share what you see when you do ship work. And for me to be able to go, oh my gosh, I've seen that. I know that. I know that. I've done that. That was a blast for me. That was one of my favorite presentations just because of those photographs. So I
Yeah, and
shouldn't
I
say
was
photograph
curious
drawings.
if she was like channeling those pictures from him. You know what I mean? Because she channeled our pictures doing,
Oh,
you
I
know,
don't know. I didn't
it.
ask them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would be curious to know that. But anyway,
Yeah.
they were
And
beautiful.
the sad part about that particular gentleman is he had some kind of I don't know if it was an accident. I didn't catch what he said in his a
He had a
story,
head
but
trauma.
something about a head trauma, and he isn't able to do his book quite yet. Maybe soon, because it would be really nice to be able to see that. So aside from that, there was this wonderful man that was very scientific, and this one was in the evening, and I think we were a little bit tired at that point
Yeah.
because our, again, mouse and our eyeballs were bugging out like, oh my goodness, I have no idea what this man is talking about. And he talked extensively about inner earth. And he was so scientific that I felt like a complete dork, that a lot of it was going over my head. And yet some of it wasn't. And this is another theory kind of a thing that I encourage people to keep your brain open to. Keep your mind open. Inner earth, flat earth. What is it? Who knows? Who really cares? But I mean, he is adamant with his actual documentation, scientific side of things. He's written numerous books on it, is really got an entire organization behind him that has been put together, and they were doing it pre-2020. And we all know what happened in 2020.
Yep.
So everything got shut down.
Right.
Okay, so this project got shut down, but they're revving it back up, and they are going to Antarctica, he claims, by the end of the year, with this massive structured boat that is going to be their floating laboratory. And he is very, very serious about getting actual proof to the masses that the inner earth does exist, and that there are beings and creatures and all kinds of things. And that presentation was, I didn't know what to do with that whole thing. That was a lot.
And I think that it would be interesting to get more into it, because it kind of dispels a little bit of the climate piece
Oh,
at the
yeah.
same time, because of the history that they're finding and the number of years that things have been around and how it was before. And so the inner earth part of it, though, when he said there's an ocean in the inner earth, I'm like, what, with creatures? Okay. Like, and I just right away I felt like that swishing feeling of, wow, there's something inside of what we're standing on right now, living.
It's a concept that is like opens your brain up to a million new questions. And I think it will be very interesting to see if they actually do pull this off and be able to get through Antarctica, because we all know how messy that area can be if you study any of this. And it will talk about pole shifts and climate change along the way, which, like you mentioned, is very important, I think, for people to get a different perspective on as well. Keep your mind open. But yeah, and I know for a fact that there's beings that have been trapped in the earth, because as a grid worker, I've done that work. And so I've seen that. I don't go inner earth as much as I go multi-galactic. And so that was a new playing ground for me to listen to. I've done some of it. I've done some, grid reversals, etc., in the second and third core of the earth, but I haven't gone to where he was talking about. So that was a new thing for me. And part of me was really interested and really piqued. And I didn't feel like that was a ridiculous rabbit hole, where sometimes when we have conspiracy theories, it's like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can really believe that. This one was so scientifically based that it was like you were just kind of scratching your head, like, why don't we know this? Why isn't this normal? Why isn't this just mainstream at this point? And we all pretty much know why.
I think that this expedition will be so exciting to see the results of. And I feel for myself, I have definitely at least held space for inner earth. I've had experiences with release from inner earth of beings, not sure what they were or why. I do a lot of that work in my dreams. So really, really curious, especially because a water baby, if there are sea creatures and different things living that we don't have here, I'm also very curious about what that looks like.
Right. And I've done so much elemental work, and the elemental work in the 2D realm shadows an inner earth 2D realm elemental, which can oftentimes be misunderstood for demonic creatures, which they're not necessarily at all. And so I've done a lot of that work over the years. So I'm in the inner earth to a certain extent, but he's talking like full blown, like
Man,
let's open this marble up and see what's inside. And so that
into the
one,
core. Yep.
yeah, that one for me was, I think, super awesome, really awesome.
Yeah.
Another gentleman did a very in-depth presentation about a person who wrote a book on abduction, and he is no longer alive. So this person interviewed him and wrote his story. I didn't sit in on 100% of that, but I did buy the book, and so I'm going to read that when I have some time. So that one, I didn't feel like I knew enough to tell the story, but this abduction theme and people being taken, I think, was pretty prevalent throughout the whole entire conference. Obviously, I mean, that's part of what they talk about is being taken. And I think it's important for us to know lots of the information on hybrid and being taken and going on ship. This can be a nefarious agenda, but it can be an actual benevolent agenda. And those two things exist simultaneously with different kinds of groups and different kinds of experiences. And so I'm very aware of both, because oftentimes I come across the negative agenda, draconian, Orion, gray, the difficult ones, as well as I go on ship oftentimes with the benevolence, and I have great experiences. So my body is very trained in terms of knowing which vibration is the safer one for me and which is what. And so this is another reason I believe this kind of a conference maybe wants to be blowing it up bigger and bigger in terms of get your own work done, get your own field on, get your own auric template really, really comfortable, so that you are the one that is discerning, that you are the one that's saying, this is true, this is negative, this is positive, all of those things. Nobody, even a conference or us or anyone included, is telling you from the outside what your truth is. It's important for us to look at this. One of the things that I said to the Vibe Tribe when we did quite an extensive summary of this on our webcast the other night, and again, you can check out Vibe Tribe anytime, anybody that's listening, it's on my website. It's a monthly program. We do our best to do a webcast every single month. We do a theme. We have an actual message. We have meet memos. We have meditations. Kim writes a prayer according to what is happening. We do a webcast. The webcast, I do my best to extend well beyond what the monthly thing is. So you get a lot for your $33 a month.
Mhm.
And we do our best to educate people on all kinds of things well beyond just conspiracy stuff, right? I mean,
Right.
we dabble in everything. But what I tell them, and I will say here for listeners is, and I say this to my own kids, like, for example, we were at the cabin right after this, and I looked up at the moon and I said, hey, do you guys even think the moon's real? And my kids just did the, oh my God, Mom, here you go. Here you
Here she
go.
goes.
And I said, I'm just asking. I said, I'm just asking, do you think that the moon is real? And they're like, of course the moon's real. And I said, and isn't that interesting that you automatically assume, of course, it's real because you've been told it's real and that your classes in school tell you that it's real. And I said, maybe just stay neutral. Maybe just stay neutral. The reason why I teach my groups and anyone that I know that wants to listen is about neutrality is because the day, if the information does come forward that it is not what we think it is, and it isn't just about the moon, it's about, the secret space program, the inner earth, the aliens, the abduction, the all the really scary things, the secret space stuff that, they take people and that we're off, but all these things, if we stay neutral and just ponder and don't dig our feet in the ground and say, absolutely no, that is just bullcrap. If we stay open and not necessarily jump in 100% and say, oh, it's completely real, and I have to convince everyone either. Those are the two extremes. If we stay in the middle, the day that disclosure comes forward, your human psyche and all of your fields, and I mean your physical, your emotional, more so your mental, and then your spiritual field will not crack because you have left the door open to ponder. And I think this is the biggest message that I want to give in wrapping up our experience here, is that Kim and I would go back, we'd crack our bottle of wine and laugh and giggle, but then we'd get serious, and then we'd laugh and giggle, and then we'd get serious. And that's why I value our work together, in that it's ponder, it's neutrality, it's questioning, and it's not slamming the door on anything. And I think that's what's going to save disclosure outcome.
Yeah, I truly agree. I did not walk out of there thinking, oh my God, what are we going to do now with all the, like, I didn't take it on empathically that I need to fix this, solve it, do whatever. But my curiosity and having an open mind about this and getting a good feel for some of these speakers were just really authentic, and just want people to hear their story. And, so staying more neutral in that, it allows for my body not to just, in my heart and everything, to just crumble around all of this, because that's a lot of information that we took in over that 3-day period.
And I think Tyler and Aaron did a very nice job of keeping it kind of open, in that it didn't go down as, oh my gosh, we have to be really scared. And they do well on their podcast with that as well, because they do not make it feel scary. And yet there's some horrific things that they shed light on, right? And even this group of people, which again was so eclectic, it didn't feel like there was an undertone of scared, and it certainly didn't feel like an undertone of disrespect for anything, because it can also get the audience that goes, whatever, UFOs, you guys are all a bunch of nut jobs, wear your tinfoil hat. That was not happening at all. And that was part of the reason I also went to see what the feedback and the feeling of everything was. And I was actually very impressed with the neutrality of everything, and yet the seriousness of sharing education. Right.
Really, really friendly. And we're curious. What about you? What are you doing? Or what is your story? Like, what people were just genuinely there to be around people that have similar curiosities or experiences.
And for me personally, with all the weird stuff I do, I was feeling pretty normal. I came back and told my kids I was actually normal for 4 days. So that was like awesome, right? I mean, to sit there and tell people that you go on ship and you do this and you change grids and you do reversal programs. I was like, So, and that's stuff I don't talk about a whole lot. I mean, that is, things that I kind of keep on the down low. And so for me to have somebody like that gentleman with all the pictures show the things that I see, I mean, that was super fun. So it was neat. I'm wearing my ESETI shirt. I think you can kind of see it. This is the ranch. They actually made some references to. He was not involved in this in any way, but ESETI is the kind of like the place out in Washington. And I don't know what the acronym stands for. I can't remember, but it's the extraterrestrial ranch on the land that really shows a lot of UFO activity. And I think it's James Gillian. And you can look it up online if you're interested. But I did with another friend, ESETI, probably 6 years ago already, and saw 22 ships like right out of the gate, and then proceeded to be there for 2 more days and saw massive amounts of ships. And we're using the infrared glasses and the sky watching, and watched the ships go directly into Mount Adams and come back out again. Now, in this case, we don't know if the ships are technically all UFOs or if they are government, because they get a lot of government interference at this particular ranch. And James is all over. I think he has his radio shows As You Wish on the radio, internet radio, and that's pretty powerful stuff. He does a lot of interviews. I actually got interviewed on his show back then when we were at the ranch. He asked me to be a guest that night and talk about some of the work. So that was pretty cool. But ESETI is another opportunity for anybody that's really looking for night watch, UFOlogy, ability to see things. That place is pretty darn crazy. So it is not involved with the Journey to Truth in any way, shape, or form from this conference. And I don't know if they've even ever interviewed him or aligned with that, but just me personally, that was another place where I got to do some pretty cool UFO stuff. So
and that's in the Northwest, right? His ranch is out in the Northwest.
I think it's Washington, right in the border of Oregon and Washington. I remember just kind of right there. And I did a personal trek myself and went all the way down to Mount Shasta and did a whole lot of inner earth. And in that regard, I can go and remote view inside of Shasta and spent a lot of time at Shasta. I think I was there 2 days or so by myself, just doing, and I was doing a really crazy meditation at Mount Shasta, and Mount Shasta is packed. I mean, packed with people, right? And I pulled into this little area, and it was okay early in the morning. It wasn't like, tons of people around. In fact, there was nobody around when I sat on this rock, and I was meditating and out of my body for quite some time and came back. And I had my eyes open while I was out of my body doing work, but my eyes were open watching because I was alone. And I just had, that feeling of monitoring myself. And I had not kept track of how long I was gone. And there was never a person around me at any time, the entire time I was doing that work. And the second I flew back 100% in my body, the place was packed with people. And I mean, packed with people. And I sat there scratching my head going, I don't even know how that happened. How did all of those people just appear? I looked at my watch. I had been out of my body almost close to 2 hours.
Wow.
And so I don't even know where I was or what I was actually really doing. I don't know if I was in the mountain. I'm not sure where I was, but I was completely safe sitting on this rock for almost 2 full hours. And there was never a person in my peripheral view anywhere, never making a noise, never anything. And the second I was back in, boom, it was full. And it was so crazy to me. That was, I think, one of my coolest things that happened at Shasta.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shasta's a nutty place, and it has a lot of government stuff going on inside of it. When I was scanning it, you could feel a lot of the ancient stuff, a lot of the government stuff, and it was very pocketed for me. Same thing happens in Sedona for me when I go into the rocks there. And so I can get a lot of different information, and I can feel the government stuff for me, that secret space stuff for me, feels completely different vibration for me when I'm near the rocks or near the bases. And you can just get that, that information. But again, you don't get that unless you train yourself so that you know your own field. So these are important, I think, elements that I would like to see get into that conference, so that those people that are doing, oh, I'm going sky watching, or I'm going to go find Sasquatch, or I'm going to go do this or that, they know how to protect their field, and they know how to not empath things, and they know how to not take it home. And I think that's critical.
It is critical. It is critical. I think health-wise, it's imperative to learn how to do this. So
yeah. So we'll keep you posted if we go to anything else, because I think that was a super fun road trip, and it was just interesting for us to open our brain up a little bit. It was good validation for us, sold some books, had some fun, saw some crazy places and met some nutty people, and it was super cool. So some nice people.
Fantastic.
So check out Journey to Truth if you choose to. They have their own podcast again online. You can find them on YouTube. As far as us, if you like this video, please hit the like button, hit the share button, tell your friends about it so that we can share our messages even more. And again, as always, take what resonates.
Yeah. And definitely leave comments. We're waiting to hear some comments on anything that we could do differently, or subjects that you'd like to hear about.
Yeah. And we look forward to doing more. So on behalf of both of us, thank you all, and we'll see you next time. Cosmic Hugs. Bye-bye.